Actually, sir, if you see, there are already many reports which are indicating that the US economy might dip into the recession. And after these concerns are more intensified after the IMF has also forecasted that there could be the global recession after the second consecutive result by the US companies on this July 28th. The agenda for the discussion is today that let's have a some thoughts on that what would be the impact of this decision in India, if it would be there in India, and how would be the job market. Now, if we see some of the US companies, if you can name some like Oracle, like Google, like Twitter, like Snapchat, a lot of companies, they have started the laying of their employees. So, now for this discussion, Mr. Nathan, who is the partner and Chief Talent Officer from the Deloitte India. So, first, I would like to know, sir, that how do you see this scenario? What would be the impact in India?
Ramesh, thank you so much for inviting me to this show. I'd start off by saying a couple of things. We have had recession in 2000, we have had recession in 2008. If you look at 16, we had another one. So these are cyclical, and it's a little strange that it has come a little early. And this is on the backdrop of a certain war in one place, some geopolitical instability. All of these add to a certain sense of fear. We have noticed that every time that there is a recession and when US kind of sneezes, India catches a cold. That was what it was earlier. That's slowly changing. They're changing for different reasons. The first of which is what is happening in the US is certainly people are worried, people are looking at how they can cut costs. The first biggest cost, depending entirely on the industry they are in, is the people cost. So if you look at all the names that you have mentioned right now, they're all in places where you could have a sizable chunk of what they have as cost, as people costs. The first thing that they would do is they would want to remove the people cost. Does the work go away? No, Ramesh, it does not go away. Somebody has to do that work. That work will have to be offshore to India. So for every dollar that is spent in the US, all they have to do is spend 33 cents in India. Okay, well, in today's day and age, India is getting a little more expensive, let's say 40, 45, 50, but still cheaper, making sure somebody has to do that job. So I see the possibility of more work coming into a lot of these service companies and a lot of the global in-house centers in India. So I see that there would be a minor blip or more to the fears, but actual job in the markets that we see and opportunities are not going to come down anytime soon. If you look at what is happening within India, India is growing. There is a perceptible growth. We have always this big preponderance whether we are growing enough, whether more people are getting jobs, all of that. Indications clearly prove that when we are moving into manufacturing, when we are moving into engineering, when we are moving into services, all of these, the moment you start to work harder over there are only more jobs available. If you look at certain policies that have been enunciated by the government, it makes it a lot more easier on more employment and employment generation that comes into the fore. So I know it's a long answer, but I believe that if there are fears about recession, they are more likely to affect the stock market than the job market.
If you see in the first quarter results here in India, most of the IT companies we found like TCS, like your SCL, like Infosys, Infosys has done the good recruitment in the first quarter, but other two, three companies, SCL, TCS, there is a slowdown in hiring in previous quarter. So that is just a concern, a fear, or that is the impact.
I don't think that's going to be an impact. Look at it this way: the projects that are taken by these organizations are multi-year projects. They are not like things that can be done overnight.
Right.
Second reason that I would believe, if in the companies that you've just mentioned, they are looking at a certain growth rate. With growth comes additional profitability, and that's what these things show up in the books. So I would see these more as blips. Certainly, there could be a slowdown in the US markets. But whether it affects us to a point where we will have to get really seriously worried about it, I think only a few quarters down the line will tell us. I am very optimistic because the IT industry, we saw a very similar thing which happened in 2008. 2000 was the year which defined the entire IT industry. And I'm talking about something that happened almost 20 years ago.
Right.
But that's a lesson which we can pick from the history. After every one of those blips, there has only been a huge rise. I would really believe that we have to start to prepare for what happens for tomorrow.
How in such a scenario, if we see a little concern or might be a little fear, and how the industries that will be also all the industries I'm talking about, that will be the IT, that will be manufacturing or consulting, audit firm, how the HR professionals of this industry can prepare uh, for the, if that's okay, that is really good if there is no impact in India, but still they are conscious. So how they can prepare for the future?
Very, very good question. See, I think we have to be far more innovative. If you look at what happened in the recent past, post the COVID, there have been a tremendous run on people and talent, and trying to get talent into organizations has been a huge, huge challenge. And because of which everybody started to pay these unnatural hikes for people coming into organizations. So it led to almost many of us chasing our own tails. It's going round and round. I don't think this is a good thing that you could do for any industry. But sanity is slowly coming in. People in HR can do three things. One, get far more cost conscious. Second, get far more productivity conscious, which means look at what is happening in the business, find out those areas of productivity that you can work very closely with the business. And the third one is find ways of making sure that for the future work that comes in, there are people ready and you don't have to buy them from the market, but you can build them from what you have from these colleges. And if you look at, so all of them point to two things. One, can we look at HR professionals getting to be a lot more cost conscious? That is at one end. The other one is getting to be a little more innovative, making sure that there are new talent models that we can bring in again to support the business. Because what the business needs today is one, availability of talent at the right cost and making sure that this is the talent that will continue to stay with us. There are other models like the gig model, which means you can use talent for a certain period of time and then after which they can go back. I think we need leaders and people in human resources start to look at innovatively what can be done within organizations that can address some of these issues. Last but not the least is there's no point going and trying to hire talent if you cannot retain your talent. So there must be organizations which are purpose led. People stay in organizations if they feel that this is purpose led, where they can learn and where they can grow. So if you address all those three with a clear sense of purpose, letting people know that they can learn and grow in an organizations, we would have solved a very big problem that faces the industry today, attrition.
Right. Thank you so much. And basically, when we talk about the cost, uh, uh, cost cutting, or if we talk about sometimes we also downsize the strength in organization. That time the communication is very important. What is the communication from the HR side? So the right message that must reach to the every single individual. What exactly the HR professional wanted to communicate. So how do you see that? How the effective communication has its role during such activities when they try to downsize, or they want to optimize the productivity or the cost cutting.
First of all, I don't believe in downsizing. Personally, I don't believe in downsizing, and you can take this as something that comes from me, because people that you have so carefully tried to hire from the market, make sure that they are trained, that they are immersed in the culture of an organization. They have done all this, they have given a lot to the organization. Then calling them one day and say, I'm going to downsize the organization, so you'll have to go. I think what you're doing with that is you're allowing a certain part of your culture to be diluted and then washed away. I certainly believe many of these things, if you're able to stand by people in these hard times, they will stand by you in the easy times, what? In the hardest of times. So I believe communication is important to let people know the truth. There are times when we had the COVID, and the COVID really hit a lot of organizations. Many organizations took it upon themselves not to downsize their people, but they said we will contain costs. Many leaders refused to even take a, a pay hike. Many of them tightened their belts. It came to a point where several people said, I'll take a 20% pay cut because we'll be able to make sure that we don't lose our people. And in the times of COVID, if you have supported people, they continue to support us. So, communication, I would say, is keep people honest about what is happening. And whether good or bad, it's very important to say what is important for people to hear. Anything that they hear as what I call as Chinese whispers. You say something, and by the time it reaches somebody's ears, it's completely different. So communication, keeping people straight, people keeping them honest about what is happening in an organization. Last, there must be a tinge of optimism laced in any of these communications. I'm not saying you've got to be overtly gung-ho about the future, but if you're not optimistic about it, you're not addressing the fears that people have. They will have fears about this thing, but say, okay, even I'm not even talking about platitudes of saying, we shall overcome. But I'm talking about ending all these conversations that we have had these things in the past, and with collective support, this is what we can do. Communications in itself can be energizing. In
Right.
good times, it is easy. In bad times, to come, I'm not talking about this as a bad time, so please don't get me wrong. In bad times or difficult times, communications can enliven people, their hope, aspirations, desire, laced with reality.
Right. So there is also one more concern among the employees that might be the compensation part might be little affected. Or so, what would be the trends you see in compensation, especially if we talk about some of the employee benefits? So, how do you see what would be the trends in this financial year in India, especially?
Well, I would say last year was a good year. In fact, it was the best year in a very, very long time. And I suspect part of that is because you had COVID and everybody started to squeeze on resources which are available, read capital. So when the time came and they discovered that yes, people work from home and they still prospered and the organizations continue to do well, the purse strings got loosened a bit. What do I see for the future? In the difficult of times, at least in the last 5 years, we've had a range of anywhere between 8 to 10%. I don't think that's going to change.
Right.
This year, we were 11 to 12, but a range could be anywhere between 8 to 10%. I don't think it'll be anywhere less than that. I think it's more veering to the 10 than to the 8 for this year.
Right. Thank you. Another, I would like to know, especially with the Deloitte, what is your hiring plans for this year?
Or we will continue to hire the same way as we did last year. Maybe we'll hire a tad more because our entire intent is to make sure that we address what the business needs. And don't forget that in any organization, there's always a tad of attrition that happens. So we'll have to do three things again. One, hire for the future. Two, take care of people's positions that have been vacated or to attrition. And three, you have to prepare yourself for the firm of the future. So when you're hiring, don't hire against just the positions. Don't hire only for attrition. But the big one is around how do you hire for the firm of the future or the organization of the future or the company of the future? We're also looking at the past, that there is a new world. This whole thing around digitalization, the whole digital world that has come in requires a different spate of skills and which are not available in the market today. So if you add a third one to what is, or the fourth one to what is more important is, please ensure that we hire people who have the requisite skills. And if they don't, then we got to find ways to train them to get there.
I would like to also specify the lateral hires and vertical, any numbers you'd like to specify for the next quarter?
Ramesh, we don't share numbers,
Okay.
so please don't embarrass me, ask me about numbers. Suffice it to say that a trend that we had in the last year is not changing. So at least that gives you some idea about where our hiring numbers are.
Do you see also there will be any impact of this situation, you call it recession fear, on the return to office plans of the organizations?
So a few things about return to office. I think return to office is important for many organizations if they have to build and sustain a culture. So return to office is important. However, many organizations are going in for what I call as a hybrid mode. And hybrid is important because what the COVID has done is it has allowed for people to experiment with their time and find creative ways of working and also manage life. I'm not saying many of them have done a great job of it because many people suffer from burnouts. And whenever people come into an office, there is a definition of when work starts and when work ends. If you stay at home, there is no idea of when work starts and when work could potentially end. You do not start the computer in the morning at, let's say, 9 o'clock and close it by 6 in the evening. We don't. It's not sunrise and sunset because that is what defined us when we went to work. So we need people to come to work because if you're working in a team, the proximity, the social interaction, and many people in the COVID, in the last couple of years, they joined organizations, they left organizations, they have never even seen an office of that particular organizations. The only thing that they have seen and which they can call as an identity with which they could relate for the time that they were there is a laptop which will talk about the organization that they belong to because they have an email ID. The email ID became their identity. So what is the identity that one can hold? Unless you get to work a physical space, get to work with them, get to see what is happening around. And by the way, the world is moving to a hybrid. There are organizations which says that they would not have anything more than 25% in the workspace. Some others have said, work from home all your life. Our offices are available. What do we do? What we have done is we have taken a combination of both. We said we'll do hybrid. You want to work 2 days in a week, fine. 3 days in a week, fine. You want to work all the time, fine. If you want to work all the time from home, please make sure that your manager approves of it. Otherwise, on certain meeting days, for example, if I have to meet my people tomorrow because it's important that all of us get together, there is a combined meeting, staff meeting that I hold, then we would encourage people to come. It's very rare for people not to come. People are also, Ramesh, not very, they're tired of sitting at home. Not, and if you look at people who are in Bombay, the less privileged space wise of any of the cities in India, and living in a two-bedroom house where the spouse could be in another room, you could be in another room, and if you have children, where do they sit? So somewhere the hybrid will come back, as it is already has, and in some places people have mandated people returning to work. The IT organizations today are getting to be far more aggressive and calling people back to work. So what do you think the future holds for us? It'll be a hybrid. People will come back to work. People will be able to see the benefits of coming to work, and some of them who request for a hybrid kind of work, if it works for them, works for the organizations, then I think you have a happy story.
So, any concluding remarks would like to share?
So Ramesh, we started with a very difficult question on the whole thing around what is the outlook. Um, the outlook is optimistic. For all our HR colleagues who are around, I would like to say this, that each one of us have different kinds of pressures. But this is the time to focus on two things for us personally. One, focus on our own well-being, mental well-being. That's the most important thing, because what the COVID has done is it has robbed us of the thing that matters to us, which is getting to a workplace. When you are at work, you have a friend at work. You could always share a few things. You can't do this over a phone. You can't do this over a Zoom. So the first big one is focus on yourself. And the second big one is, if the times are changing, we have to keep up with the times. So whether this is about learning, reinventing ourselves, finding different ways to solve problems, I think this is the time. And we better start doing it quickly, otherwise we could be moving into obsolescence as HR professionals. Back to you, Ramesh.
I'm glad to know that you are very optimistic that there wouldn't be any major impact on India. And even if there is in recession fear or any concern, so you also shared with me, also uh, given us the tips that how the job professionals they can manage it. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time and your responses. Thank you so much.